Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this special Crisis in the Classroom Town Hall. I'm Mark Bradshaw.
And I'm Brenna Rose. We have a lot to get to. The goal over the next half hour, explore ideas to solve some of the biggest issues facing education today.
All right, here to share some of their ideas, State Senator Dewayne Pemberton, Education Committee Vice Chair, former teacher and principal.
Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association President Shawna Mott-Wright. And Joyce Yang, a Bartlesville junior and member of the State Superintendent Student Advisory Council.
All right, thank you all for being with us. Joining us for this very important conversation, very important topic there. All right, let's start with an issue that Oklahoma has struggled with for quite a while, and that's talking about the teacher shortage. We're talking a lot about that recently in the last few years.
But before we dive into the conversation, Katie Arata shows us that we're not the only ones here that are struggling to find teachers.
As Oklahoma's teacher shortage is something the state has worked tirelessly to solve, Texas is experiencing similar issues. And Fort Worth's ISD is using these billboards to try and recruit Oklahoma teachers to their Fort Worth classrooms. The current teacher shortage is being felt around the country, with many teachers leaving the profession as a whole.
There's a frustration level amongst teachers that has gotten to an extent that it's not just jumping to a job that might pay better or might treat them better, but they're jumping into, well, we're going to get out of this profession and we're going to try to figure it out.
Oklahoma Legislature has been working on solving this problem by making sure teachers are appropriately compensated for their hard work.
It's utilizing existing funds that would be matched with districts so that our best teachers would have opportunities to make significantly more and stay in the classroom.
The Fort Worth ISD billboards calling for Oklahoma teachers in Fort Worth classrooms are very frustrating to legislators, but are also motivating.
When I see Texas trying to take teachers and trying to recruit teachers, I want us to continue to get better because I want us to be the shining state in education. I want us to be the leader in the nation on education. We should be the ones that teachers are flocking to.
Secretary of Education Ryan Walters has a message for teachers who are deciding where they want to work.
When you come to Oklahoma, we're going to support you as a teacher. We're going to make sure you have the ability to be successful because we know that the impact you can have on our kids is tremendous. So we want the best and brightest teachers here in the state of Oklahoma. We want you here. We want you to stay here. And we want to do all we can to make sure that you're successful with our kids.
And according to Secretary Walters, the Oklahoma State Legislature has increased teacher pay over $6,000 in the last year on average.
All right, let's focus on that raise for a minute. We talked about $6,000 for the teachers there. Is that making a difference in keeping teachers here and attracting teachers? Start with you, Senator.
I think at the time, that's when I went into office. It's in 2017, and that's when we had the $1.1 billion shortfall, and we had to raise taxes. Teachers hadn't had a raise in over 10 years, and that's one of the reasons I went, first of all, since I was an educator and thought that education wasn't receiving the money they needed to. So that was one of the first things on my plate, was to try to get a teacher pay raise. And it took us a special session and about a year and a half to finally get that. And we were able to give between a $6,000 and $8,000 raise to all of our teachers. And then when the governor came in 2 years, he'd promised the teachers a raise too. So there was a $1,200 raise on top of that a year or so later. But that's been the last time that we've given our teachers raises. So at that time, we'd gotten up to second in the region, right behind Texas in teacher pay. And now we've dropped down to, I think we're tied for third right now with Kansas. So it's time to start looking at teacher pay raises again. And yes, I think it helps. I mean, people have to make a living, and with inflation at 8-9% like it is right now, it's hard for a young teacher to make a living. So we definitely have to make sure we give them a living wage in order for them to be able to stay in the profession.
Teachers love to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Shawna, what about you?
Yes, amen. We do love to hear that. We were very appreciative of the average $6,100 raise in 2018 and then the $1,200 the next year. I would be remiss if I did not say we got that raise before the walkout, and we walked out for funding for our kids. So the raise is definitely part of it, and we also need funding for our children to have the resources they need. That's why we walked out. It was great, and we're very appreciative of it still. To this day, I'm like, how did I make it before? How did I feed my kids? Because inflation's gone up. Inflation's the highest it's been since 1981. Insurance goes up every single year. And so you just have things chipping away at it. And so, yeah, it's time to do it again, because when we got those raises, they broke us even with inflation at that point in time. And now we've jumped again, so.
Joyce, as a student, you're a junior in high school at Bartlesville. Do you know of any teachers that maybe left the profession because they couldn't support themselves and their family?
Personally, none of my teachers have left the profession, but I know like the classroom resources, a lot of them have to use out of pocket money to pay for some of them, and I know a lot of them have to pick up other jobs, which the teachers are such a pivotal part of the students' lives, and if we aren't able to show that type of respect to them, it creates type of disrespect to the students as well, because there's a lack of trust between the students and teachers if they keep constantly have to like bounce back and forth between jobs, and then it kind of perpetuates the cycle because then the students are disrespectful. So I think if we can help support our teachers in that way, it will help the students as well.
So we touched on the raise, obviously, and Senator, I'll start with you. What do you think we need to do in order to get more teachers here and keep them here?
Well, obviously, we have to make sure that we compensate them properly. So that's something that we definitely this next session are going to be talking about. I've already talked to the Appropriations Chair, Senator Thompson, about looking at long-range plans for teacher pay raises. I think the other thing is the Legislature and the state of Oklahoma have to show teachers they appreciate them. And I think they don't feel appreciated right now. I think Shawna will tell you that. And in order to do that, we have to demonstrate that. I have a bill this year, 3564, which is the TSET bill, which basically pays for 4-year scholarships and bonus payments for teachers for the first 5 years that they actually teach in the classroom in the state of Oklahoma. So we'll pay it's $1,000 a year scholarship for the first 3 years, and then $2,500 their senior year, and then they will get a $4,000 incentive bonus their first, second, third, fourth, and fifth year that they teach. So overall, it's $20,000 bonuses and plus about $5,500 worth of scholarship. We think if we can help those teachers stay for 5 years, research shows that after that third or fourth year and teachers begin to get in their groove, if you can keep them 5 years, you can keep them in the state. And hopefully by the time that comes around, we'll have started giving pay raises again too. So there's some things going on in the legislature right now to help that.
You mentioned that every teacher wants to feel appreciated. Now, Shawna, I want to ask you this question. You represent a lot of teachers here in the state there. You heard Secretary Walters say, every teacher, we're going to support every teacher that comes to Oklahoma. Do you feel like the teachers that you represent feel supported by the state?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. We are terrified of how many teachers we are losing every day. I mean, it's a nonstop revolving door, and we have several early retirements, and then we know there's going to be retirees who haven't told us yet, and people who are leaving the profession altogether. And they just don't feel respected. We're degreed adults and not always treated that way.
So it's not simply money we're talking about.
Correct.
It's respect as well.
Yes.
And Joyce, from your point of view, sorry to interrupt, as a student, I know when I went to school, I so appreciated my teachers and respected them. What would your message be to your teachers?
To my teachers, I have a few really amazing teachers from the past few years. They're retiring this year. And so I can see how there's going to be that gap in our school left. And some of them, they're retiring because of age, and some of them, they aren't. But I can just say to all the teachers out there, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys, me, my friends, and my peers. Although sometimes we might not show it, you guys have made such an impact in our lives. And everything we've done is because you guys have led us here. So thank you guys, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Shawna, I want to get back to you. You mentioned about the lack of respect from the state for teachers there. Specifically, what are you talking about?
Well, I appreciate Senator Pemberton, so I'm not talking about you,
hope not.
because I would tell you if I were, and you know that about me. But we hear some legislators bring up some great legislation and then backdoor it with something really nasty or catty, or just going after certain people, or only coming after educators and not other groups. And then their answer is, well, you can go after those groups too. That's not the right answer. The answer is, you're talking at the mic, you're speaking to your peers about we need to keep teachers here for the kids, because everything you just said, I mean, I'm trying to keep it together because like you're why we do what we do. And we do need to keep teachers here. And for all the business people, I mean, we need an educated workforce. This is our economy. How goes public education, so goes the state all together as a whole. And so to hear people in the legislature advocate for good things, and then to hear other legislators, or sometimes the same one with a different bill, come up with something else. It's like, didn't you just talk about respecting teachers? Did you ask teachers? Because when I have something, I'm a high school teacher, that I'm not sure, I ask my students. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Make it make sense.
Senator, does that sound familiar with your colleagues, what she's saying there?
No, I definitely agree with her. I mean, I have colleagues that are solid education supporters, and then there are those that are not. I'll be honest with you, there was a big push this year, for private schools, and we've had some issues with funding for some of the charter schools, and we've had issues with EPIC, and we've had all types of issues, and we have a lot of legislators that don't support public education like I wish they would. So it's a battle. It's a constant battle. So I understand exactly where she's coming from. We just have to make sure we know who's in our corner and who's not in our corner, and we have to continue to put the pressure on and make sure that the parents and the constituents of the state understand who are supportive of their schools and their students. And I think that's how you make change.
Yeah.
Senator Pemberton is a champion for public education in Oklahoma, and he understands it. He's been in my shoes. And he's fighting
here.
for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The governor signed a bill you wrote to help solve the teacher shortage and eliminated a requirement. Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister not only called a useless exam, but a hurdle that's contributed to the shortage. Tell us more about the bill and about this exam that's been eliminated.
Well, they're basically to become a standard certified teacher. There's 3 exams you have to take. There's the OGAT, the OSAT, and there's also the PPT. And the OGAT is the one that the bill did away with, and it basically is a general education test for teachers. It's almost the same as the ACT or the SAT, which all high school students have to take in high school in order to qualify or go to college. Then after they graduate, then you're going to charge them $300 to take the same assessment again after 4 years of college to say that you have the skills that you need to get into college. So it didn't make any sense. Now the OSAT obviously is your subject area test. If you're a math teacher, Mark, then you want to make sure that they know their math material, and make sure you know professionalism with the PPAT. But you really don't need to have a generalized test. So we did away with that test, and I appreciate the governor for signing that. And it's just one less stumbling block for teachers to get certified in the state of Oklahoma, and hopefully more of them will get there.
Yeah, and Shawna, what's your reaction to that, and what are teachers saying?
Absolutely. What he said. We have several teachers in our classrooms who are amazing with kids, and the kids relate to them well. They get along really well. They have great lessons and great skills, and have passed everything and can't seem to get past that test. And they usually miss it by like 4 points, which is one question. And so I definitely agree with that, because we're not in the hospital, we're in the emergency room, and we need all hands on deck. So
If I could comment on that real further, when she said they have trouble passing it, a lot of the teachers that have trouble passing the math section of it, and they're not math teachers. They may be teaching language arts, or they may be a special education teacher, or they may be teaching art or music, and they're not really great math people, but they're not going to teach math. But the math section fails about 85% of those teachers that do fail it. So there's really not any reason, and I'm not a great math student, and I have a bachelor's, a master's, and then,
So if you fail that, what happens? You can't become...
You eventually cannot become a certified teacher. You can pass the other 2 tests, but you can't pass the OGAT. You have to pass all 3 of them eventually over a 3-year period.
So that's been eliminated.
That's been eliminated.
Yes.
That's gone.
That's gone.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
gone.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about test scores. Since the pandemic, we have seen more and more kids fall behind, but the problem goes back much, much further.
Oklahoma is often ranked in the bottom 10 states for education. The latest scores show only about 1 in 4 students proficient in English. It's close to 1 in 5 in math. They did fare a little better in science. Still, fewer than 1 in 3 students scored proficient or better. So what's the problem, and what can we do about it?
I would like to hear from you first.
So when we're talking about standardized testing, are you talking about the ACT, or are you talking about like just state tests in general?
I would say in general.
In general?
Right.
So I think, especially since we only take them in 11th grade, we realize that us students, it's not really impacting us, because like it's not going to determine if we graduate or not. So some students just take it to take it. They don't put a lot of effort into it. And I think the younger kids right now, a lot of them didn't get to go to school normally. Their developmental years, in which it's like pivotal to develop your reading, writing, and just like linguistic skills. they got that stolen away from them. So if we want to recover that, I feel like we need to focus on our younger students. Some of the elementary schools at ours, in my school district, are addressing that issue head on, and they can already see an improvement. And I think the younger students, we need to invest in them. Us older students, we also need to invest in us too. We need to improve from our side as well, the student side as well. And I feel like if we can help prepare for the test, maybe less trying to squeeze everything in 1 year and gradually progress from maybe 9th grade and 10th and then 11th, rather than just trying to squeeze everything into 1 year, we will be able to better understand the test and better perform. And especially since we don't take really intense tests in general, we take classroom tests and quizzes, but so we don't understand the testing environment. And I think those are just some things that if we can address, that students might take the tests more seriously.
So you're saying it's a testing rather than actual knowledge? It's how to take the test? That's the problem here.
And a lot of kids just aren't good test takers. Sometimes it could just be the day or just how they learn that could be the issue. We need a way to be able to kind of gauge where students are, but tests may not always be the solution.
And I can see you nodding your head in agreement. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, you're so smart, and you're right on target, sis. Just like we were just talking about the OGET. You have degreed professionals who can't necessarily pass the test. Test taking is a skill in and of itself. So while we're talking about tests in general, I'm going to address like the ACT, for example, and use myself as an example because I took it a million years ago. And when I took it, it was super early in the morning. You know, phones weren't really an issue, but if you had one at that time, they all went in the box. You had like one break, maybe two. Other than that, you couldn't get up, you couldn't move, you couldn't walk around, nothing. Okay, so for me, you're testing whether or not I can take a test early in the morning. If you want to know what I actually know, you can monitor me to make sure I can't cheat. I don't need my phone, right? But give it to me late at night. Let me have breaks. Like, do you want to know what I know, or do you want to know how well I test? And the same with the standardized testing all throughout the school year. We have benchmarks, and like, if I'm her teacher, I know her and she knows me, and I know her family and her family life and our community, and I know her in my classroom setting. So I know where she started, and then I know the benchmark she's hit or failed to hit, and where to go from there, where to take her. No one knows better than the teacher in the classroom. So the standardized testing is a skill, but is it telling us what kids really know? No, I don't think so. And also, if I hear the term learning loss, again, I might scream, because personally, I never survived a pandemic as a student. And so I think that's a horrible term to use, because these students have been through a pandemic. And I never had to, I never had to do that.
Yeah.
School vouchers have been a really hot topic this year, and a bill that would have given parents about $3,600 to use on things like private tuition failed after a late night debate back in March. Now, opponents said it would have devastated the public school system, but supporters say it's about choice, and they aren't giving up. Governor Stitt said, quote, "It is deeply concerning that so many voted to deny parents and students choices and keep them trapped in a system that has failed many Oklahoma children." Now, Senator Pemberton, I know that you were among those that voted to kill it. What is your concern?
Definitely vote to kill it, and we'll always vote to kill it. That's one area that the governor and I get along a lot and agree on a lot of things. This is one I totally disagree with the governor, to be honest with you. We have choice in this state. You can choose to go wherever you want to. We passed a bill just the previous legislative session, Senate Bill 783, which allowed open transfer. Kids could go anywhere, to any school in the state that had room. That was supposed to be the end all, take care of all. Then they came back and wanted to run this voucher bill. So choice is not the issue. You can homeschool your child here. I mean, anyone can homeschool. You can go to Bishop Kelly. You can go to Cassia Hall. You can go wherever you want to. The issue is, should the taxpayer across the state pay for that private education? And I say, as a public school person for years and years, no, I don't think my tax dollars, I should not be taxed to send your child to Bishop Kelly or to send them to Boulevard Christian or anywhere else. I think that the state constitution basically says that every child in the state of Oklahoma has a right to a free public education. The term public education is in there, and that's what we do, and that's why we have a state formula. That's why taxes are set up, and it's why the formula is set up to make sure that all the kids across the state have the same amount of money, a per pupil expenditure, to go to the public schools. 95% or more of our children are in public education. So the issue is not so much choice, as far as I'm concerned, it's whether our state taxpayer dollars, everyone at this table here that pays taxes, should be spent on the kids to go to the public schools, which the Constitution sets forth, or to allow those to flow with parents for private education. And that's where I differ with the governor with that.
And this is one of those issues that you got a lot of response, a lot of phone calls from your constituents.
Definitely
about.
a lot of phone calls, and I'd say I had one phone call from a constituent against my vote, one, and hundreds of people championing us on. So there's no doubt in my district, Muskogee, Cherokee County, and in rural Oklahoma, there's no doubt. The rural legislators are the ones that made sure this didn't pass. They love their schools in rural Oklahoma. They're Bragg's Wildcats, they're Hilldale Hornets, they're Muskogee Ruffers, they're Warner Eagles. They love their small schools. That's where their parents went to school, that's where their grandparents went to school, that's where their grandkids go to school. They do not want their money flowing to a private school in Oklahoma City or a private school in Tulsa. And it's nothing to do with Tulsa or Oklahoma City, but it's their dollars, they want to keep it there. And yeah, there's no one in my district, no, I couldn't count them on one hand, that wanted the voucher bill to pass.
You know, if taxpayer funding for public schools goes down, some of the first things to be cut is the arts in schools, right, usually. And Joyce, I know you're big with the arts there. How would that make you feel, you know, if you lose what you've been into for many years where you go to school?
I would be absolutely devastated, especially since Oklahoma is such a hub for the arts. Like, Broadway comes here to recruit people onto their stages, and we have such a deep, rich cultural connection to the arts, and it's been shown to benefit kids so much. And if I just showed up one day and lost everything I've had, because I've seen kids who usually don't perform well in their other classes, I've seen them show so much dedication, commitment, and work ethic to the arts program because that's what they truly love. They find such a safe space in there, and it makes me frustrated that people come to think of the arts as the first thing. They kind of think of it as a trivial thing, even though it has such an importance and has made such an impact on so many students and will forever continue to make an impact on the students' lives. So I think that the arts is something that needs to be appreciated and should not be cut.
Well said. You've talked about controversial things here. Let's talk about another one. There have been a couple of controversial bills this session that affect transgender students. One governor did sign banning transgender girls from playing on a boys' sports team.
The other is still being considered in the Senate. It prevents districts from allowing students to use the bathroom that matches the gender that they identify with. Instead, it forces students to use the bathroom of their biological sex at birth.
Now, the issue came to light after a very emotional school board meeting in Stillwater. Let's listen in now to a portion of the pleas from parents and students.
I want to speak from her perspective as a 13-year-old at the middle school and not going to the bathroom all day because she doesn't feel safe. And that's not from hating anyone. Like, we don't hate the other kids. She just doesn't feel safe and doesn't feel that, I guess, her privacy is protected.
I had boys that harassed me about what I looked like, and the place I knew I could go was the restroom. I in no way think that a transgender student would be that boy to me. But a boy posing as someone with a nefarious, and I know this hasn't happened, but for my children, it hurts the thought of them going through that.
As a member of the community, I feel that it is my responsibility to stand up and defend the most vulnerable. I visited Stillwater High earlier today, and I listened to their stories and what they had to say, and I am beyond impressed and proud of our LGBTQ+ youth.
Knowledge is the enemy of fear. When a child is afraid of thunder, we explain that it's part of nature and it's not going to hurt them. And when a child is confused about someone who looks or behaves differently from them, we should take the opportunity to explain that different is not necessarily bad or scary.
Failure or unwillingness to educate a child about something they don't understand doesn't protect them from the perceived dangers about that thing. Instead, it serves to perpetuate fear as the correct response to something unknown and unfamiliar.
If transgender and non-binary students are forced to use the bathrooms for their biological gender, they say that they don't feel safe. But you heard there one mother say that her 13-year-old daughter does not feel safe if they're allowed to use the girls' room. Is there any solution here really that protects the safety of all of our children?
I think there is. Matter of fact, when I was the principal at Muskogee High School in the late 2010, 11 through 15, we had a couple of students who were transgender or had gender identity issues, and the solution that we had with our attorneys is basically give them a single private use restroom. So they did not have to go into the biological male or female restroom, and that seemed to be worked fine. They had no problems with that, and we did that for, I guess they're still doing that to this day. Now I know Stillwater's had a little different, had a different take on that, and they're, I guess, have asked the state to intercede. I guess they asked the Attorney General to intercede, and he asked the Legislature to intercede. So I don't know whether we'll see a bill this week. I know there's one that just came out of conference committee. I think it's House Senate Bill 615, which would address that. But there's ways to do it, and I believe that bill also gives that option in there for schools. You know, you go to the restroom of your biological birth sex, or you can go to a single-use restroom, a single facility restroom, and almost every school has those. So that's the response for that right now.
Shawna, what are you hearing from your teachers about this issue?
We have a problem when any child doesn't feel safe for a multitude of reasons. You know, someone walking in with a gun because they were easily able to get one when they should not have been able to, and able to get into the school somehow. The bathroom, the mother that spoke at that meeting, and also the transgender kids. Every single child should feel safe, deserves to feel safe at school. And so I do think the single bathroom is a solution, just like we started building tornado shelters. So I think it's a matter of priorities, just like we started adding those into our schools, because we realized we really need those rooms. We really need these rooms as well so that people can feel safe. And I teach high school. I know that I would see all the kids trying to get in the single room, like one at a time, but it wouldn't matter, which helps protect every child.
Does the single bathroom work in terms of from a timing perspective? You know, do kids have enough time to line up and use that facility between classes?
No, I don't think you do away with the multiple stall bathrooms. I think you add it. It has to be in addition to, not instead of. Yeah, and then also we need more ADA accessible things. I will tell you, I have learned that we have a lot of things that are ADA accessible legally. That doesn't mean they're actually accessible, and that's an issue everywhere.
No, and she's 100% right. You leave your restrooms like they are, because 98% of the kids are going to use the regular, you know, restroom, but there'll just be a small number of young people that would need that single-use restroom.
All right, back to the Stillwater School Board meeting. One woman who spoke on behalf of LGBT students said all the anti-trans bills are taking a toll on kids' mental health. She said studies show trans youth are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, even trying to hurt themselves.
Among those who had attempted suicide, 34% had done so by the time they were 13 years old. 58% of transgender youth experience victimization in school. We know that victimization and lack of acceptance are associated with suicidal behavior. However, research has shown that even minor acts of acceptance are linked to positive outcomes.
And it's not just transgender children. The state saw a large increase in the number of teenagers and preteens who have tried to take their own lives earlier this year. Governor Stitt even signed a new law requiring schools to print the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline on student ID cards starting next summer. Well, not required, it also allows schools to include the crisis text line. The Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office says that 38 children between 8 and 17 committed suicide in 2020. Let's start here with Senator Pemberton. Does that number shock you?
It shocks me if even one child committed suicide. I mean, it's scary. And as a school administrator for 26 years, I was lucky enough never to have one, but I know some schools that did have suicides, and some of those were completed. So I mean, it's a difficult thing for the entire school population. But there's no doubt that this pandemic even created more problems with regard to that. Kids staying at home, isolated, not being able to get out with their friends and socialize. So there's no doubt that we've had some issues with mental health, and that's why several bills have been passed this legislative session. I know Senator Hast in the Tulsa area has several of those. I passed one here just a few weeks back that would make some changes to provide more services and develop basically a cooperation between the mental health and substance abuse and the State Department of Education at the schools to create basically protocols for kids that are in suicide mode. And so we're trying to do things to make sure we take care of these young people.
You know, we're hearing so much more nowadays about mental health issues, a lot more than, Senator, you and I, when we were in school, we never heard that. Why is that? Are we just more sensitive now, or is it more of a problem now than it was 40, 50 years ago?
Well, when you and I grew up, you know, I'm not going to date you, but I'm over 65 years old now. But
so am I.
But we mostly came from traditional families, mother, father families, traditional. My grandparents lived next door. I mean, there was a lot of supports, and nowadays 7 out of 10 Oklahomans are divorced. One parent families, a lot of those do not take care of their children very well. They're running the streets. I think there's just not the support base there in this day and time in our culture. There are a lot of issues that we did not face when you and I were kids back in the 60s or late 50s or whatever.
And Joyce, I want to hear from you on this. Do you think having that phone number will help?
I think having that phone number is a good step. However, if that's the only step we're taking, I think that's unacceptable. If by that time, the students already have that kind of mindset in mind. So if we could prevent it earlier on, something we talked about at the Superintendent Hoffmeister Student Advisory Council was having the ability to contact professionals at school, like trained professionals in that field, because our counselors, they're amazing. However, sometimes we just need someone who is trained in that to help us through those situations, and just giving teachers, you know, some education on the telltale signs of when they're going through those tough times can also really help, because then they can be able to notify the necessary people, because the teachers are the ones who see us every day, and the friends also are the ones who can see, because if one of my friends is having a bad day and I'm gonna get concerned for them, I want to be able to approach a teacher who will be able to contact that professional. So if we are able to get those resources in place, along with having that number, I think that could help students right now, especially the pandemic really did impact our mental health because we were just so confused. There's so much uncertainty and isolation.
And Shawna, getting back to what Dewayne and then Joyce just said there, teachers nowadays have so much more on their plate than they did 40, 50 years ago with these mental health issues with the one-parent families, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I come from a two-parent home. My parents will celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary in November, and I'm a single mom, you know, which I didn't plan, and things happen, and that's how it is. So that is a difference also back in the day. People didn't talk about things as much, and we're really trying to remove the stigma, so people could have been going through things, or we also have sometimes kids with special needs that were treated differently, inappropriately back when, that now we know better, and when you know better, you do better. What she said about the pandemic, definitely, without a doubt, just in isolation and uncertainty. I could not have put it better. That's just the perfect way to describe it all. But yes, teachers, counselors, everyone in the school building, you know, overwhelmed. Administrators are overwhelmed, and it's just rolling down. And then we also experience secondary trauma off of our children because we care for them the way we do. And so it's just this never-ending snowball and cycle at the same time. And
maybe another reason why teachers are leaving the profession or not getting into it.
It's heartbreaking, and I don't use that term lightly. It's just heartbreaking because you go into it. Ours is a profession of hope. The kids are why you stay, but it's just becoming all so much, and we're seeing that with our children. So then when we feel like we're not able to help them the way we want to help them, it's killing us.
And I can tell this is a very emotional issue for you.
Yes.
Now, last year, the Superintendent's Advisory Council did push for more counselors in schools, and lawmakers listened, investing $35 million in order to make it happen. Now, Joyce, are you seeing that pay off in schools just yet?
I think so. Our school has always had an amazing counseling system, but now with that support, we can even make it even better. I've seen kids from all around the state, like whether it be rural or urban, I've seen them be able to get those more resources, but I still think that it's kind of slow to roll out. Some schools have yet to be able to implement it yet, so I think once we see that complete rollout, we'll be able to see such a big improvement, because they not only help us with our mental health, they also help us with like scheduling and colleges and scholarships. That was one of the really important things we talked about at the meetings, was that a lot of kids don't know about the scholarships. So with that counselor corps, we are able to give kids opportunities that they didn't know about before.
All right, let's move on here. Now, before we go, though, we want to ask, is there one problem in education that you could solve right now if you had the opportunity? And what is it, and how would you fix it?
Oh gosh, if I had the opportunity, or if I had the finances.
Okay.
If I had the opportunity, to fix anything, first of all, as Joyce had said, I would make sure that we pull more counselors into the classrooms, or into the. I think we need to bring mental health counselors into the schools. I know some of the community schools in the Union District are already doing that. I think that we have to have more wraparound resources so that we take some of those pressures off the teachers. Teachers can't be a counselor or a mentor, the mental health worker, and the surrogate parent, which is what they're asked to do right now. So we need to bring those wraparound services, and it's going to take money, and it takes some changes in our concepts. I know the community school concept was the bill I ran this year. It didn't make it on the floor on deadline week, but some of the schools, I know Tulsa Public wanted to get involved in that jinx, but it basically wraps around and pulls partnerships in from all the surrounding area around the schools, and you have dentists and doctors and different vendors that come in and help the schools and help the kids, and I think it takes the pressure off the teachers so the teachers can teach. I've had teachers actually quit me and say, I love to teach, but I can't teach because I'm doing too many things, or I have got too much paperwork. So we try to cut back on some of the paperwork and some of the unfunded mandates, and that's when a bill comes to the Education Committee, if it's an unfunded mandate, I'm gonna vote against it automatically, because we cannot continue to put more things on teachers or schools without putting the money out there. So bringing more help to the teachers to make their job better and make it easier, and so that the kids feel more comfortable and they're more successful, and then your test scores will go up and everything else. If I had a magic wand, that would be my number one thing.
Shawna, so what's the biggest problem that you'd like to see solved with your magic wand?
I would say the teacher shortage, because everything we do is about kids. We go into it for the kids, we stay for the kids. Some of us, when we were going to leave, stay for the kids, and some of us come back because we can't stand not to be with kids. So it has to be about the kids. And student learning conditions are teacher working conditions, and teacher working conditions are student learning conditions, and you can't get away from that. So similar to what Senator Pemberton said, we need funding. We walked out for funding. Thank you for the raise. We walked out for our kids, and we need resources. Our counselors are overwhelmed, and often doing all the testing and scheduling, and the teachers are doing everything. And I think he put it really well. If you think of going to a buffet and you fill up your plate and you just keep piling on and you never take anything off, one, that's nasty. Two, stuff's gonna start to fall off, right? And that's what's being done to teachers. And maybe people get a clue and one or two things are taken off, but 25 were put on. So we're still having an issue there. Just like right now, really proud of the legislature with the budget and the surplus and everything, but priorities, right? Because a budget is a moral document. You show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. And so in the past, there was like 100-foot hole and like 20 feet of dirt was put in. Senator Pemberton's one of the ones that got to put the dirt in. He's not the one that dug the hole, right? And that's great. And any good teacher knows positive reinforcement, celebrate. We celebrate that. But also, if I'm a good teacher, you can do better. So I'm going to keep pushing you. We still have an 80-foot hole. So things like that we just need to work on. RESPECT, ask the teachers, listen to the teachers, because we'll tell you. And we've said community schools. And that is important because they provide the wraparound services, which frees me up to teach, which helps them learn better because I'm not stressed out about everything else.
And Joyce?
I
your final
completely
thoughts?
agree with the Senator, Ms. Shawna. Just being able to help those teachers get the support they need will really reflect in the students, because a good teacher can truly change a student's life. And investing in our teachers is investing in our students. And when we invest in our students, we invest in our future societies, because we are going to be the ones who are going to be the future leaders of the world. So I think what the Senator said about supporting our mental health with the community support, and that would support the teachers as well. So both Ms. Shawna and the Senator really hit the points that I was going to hit.
Well, if you're going to be a future leader of the world, we're in good hands.
Yes, amen.
Could
Well
not
said.
agree more.
Well said. Yeah.
Well, if you know a crisis in the classroom that we should look into, please let us know. You can call our tip line or email us at news@ktul.com. Well, we certainly want to thank our panel for their time and all of your thoughts on this very complex issue.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We want to thank everyone watching at home. It's not something that will get solved overnight, that's for sure, but working together, we can make progress.
From everyone here at News Channel 8, good night.